Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe retrospective, taking a look at each film in the MCU and seeing how well they hold up. Last time we saw the epic conclusion to Marvel's decade-long story with Avengers Endgame, a truly unique experience. Today we look at the epilogue of the Infinity Saga with Spider-Man Far From Home. Despite the MCU's overarching narrative, Sony moved forward with a sequel to Homecoming regardless. John Watts was back to direct, while McKenna and Sommers were brought back as the sole writers. Marvel took their approach to this Spider-Man similar to Harry Potter, having each movie depict a year of Peter in school. Homecoming saw his sophomore year, so Far From Home would logically do his junior year. Sony wanted to incorporate another central MCU character after Iron Man to help keep the connection. They settled on Nick Fury since that was Watts' original pitch for Homecoming. One of the biggest challenges the film faced was coming off of Endgame. Not only did they have to carry off a phenomenal storyline to the end, but they also had to address certain things established to fill in the gaps. Far From Home premiered in the late summer of 2019. It became the first Spider-Man film to make over $1 billion at the box office, becoming one of the highest-grossing films of all time. The reception was mostly positive, with many loving the fun, globe-trotting nature of the film. Now that the MCU Spider-Man is embarking on his craziest journey, does Spider-Man Far From Home amount to anything? Let's take a swing and see. The film opens in Mexico with Fury and Hill looking into a sandstorm that witnesses claim to have a face. They encounter said storm and a mysterious man played by Jake Gyllenhaal. We cut to the Marvel Studios logo with Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You in the background as we see a cheesy and over-the-top tribute of fallen Avengers made by students at Peter's school. The school's news, hosted by Betty Brant, played by Andrew E. Rice, and Jason Ionello, played by George Lindenberg Jr., explain the events of Endgame and half the universe's disappearance, labeled in-universe as the blip. Because some students were blipped mid-semester, they had to repeat the entire year, including Peter and his classmates. Now that the school year is over, the academic decathlon team will be going on an international trip throughout Europe. Peter wants the vacation to get away from his responsibilities as Spider-Man and to try and start a relationship with MJ. One of my major criticisms here is that Peter's infatuation with MJ comes out of nowhere. I mean, I like the idea of the two being together, but there was no indication of the two having any romantic feelings for each other in Homecoming. Anyway, Peter also dodges calls from Fury and questions from reporters about the Avengers and Iron Man, as Tony's death still greatly affects him. A common theory fans have about the MCU Spidey is that Tony was essentially filling the role of Uncle Ben, with his death being the motivation for Peter to become a true hero. However, with the revelations in No Way Home, I don't think that's the case. As his class makes their first flight, Peter struggles to spend time with MJ thanks to rival classmate Brad Davis, played by Remy Hee, who survived the blip and became the group's age. In a relatively pointless subplot, Ned and Betty suddenly become attracted to each other and start a relationship. It doesn't add anything to the movie, but it's honestly one of the more fun and interesting parts. While I will admit the extensive filming in Europe is nice to see, the movie spends an awful lot of time meandering through these locations with no real purpose other than a nice backdrop. While in Venice, a giant water monster attacks the group. As Peter tries to stop it, the man from before, now wearing a glass bowl on his head, steps in and destroys it. The news gives him the name Mysterio and quickly captures the attention of Peter's class. Fury appears in Peter and Ned's room at night, incapacitates Ned, and kidnaps Peter. He gives him a parting gift from Tony, a pair of glasses with a new AI, Edith, voiced by Dawn Michelle King. This is the fourth AI from Tony. What would happen to Karen? Could they not get Jennifer Connelly back? Or what about Friday? She's got nothing to do right now. But whatever. They arrive at a makeshift base where Peter's introduced to Hill, Dimitri, played by Naman Akar, and Mysterio, whose real name is Quentin Beck. Beck introduces himself as being from another Earth in an alternate universe. He exposits the water creature as one of several, referred to as elementals, that destroyed his home. The others were destroyed by Beck, leaving the fire elemental. It will appear in Prague, and Fury essentially drafts Peter despite his pleas to stay out of it. He has a stealth suit made to hide his persona and changes his class plan to fit their path. They get to Prague, where the class is sent to the opera, while Peter and Beck prepare to fight the elemental. Fury berates Peter for misusing Tony's tech, almost killing his class by accident. While he does have a point, it reaffirms another big criticism. Fury is an asshole here. I mean, he is so rude to the point of it being out of character, which makes sense given the post-credit scene, but it still sucks. Beck does give Peter a nice pep talk, showing off some good chemistry between the two. Peter keeps his class in the safe location, save for MJ, Ned, and Betty, who follow him to the Festival of Light. He dons his new suit, dubbed Night Monkey by Ned, to keep his anonymity. The fire elemental attacks, and both Peter and Beck work together to destroy it. Fury invites Beck to a meeting in London and questions whether Stark made the right decision choosing Peter as an Avenger. Peter and Beck go to a bar and talk. They discuss Edith and the glasses, and Beck tries them on. Peter sees him resemble Tony and logically concludes that the note left by Tony was meant for him to pass on the tech to the next Tony Stark, and not him. He quickly transfers control of Edith to Beck and briskly leaves to finally ask MJ out. As he goes, the bar around Beck turns out to be a holographic projection from drones, and his entire story is a lie. Through a rather long exposition dump, Beck toasts to his crew, made up of former Stark employees, including Dr. Riva from Iron Man 1, and explains his backstory and motivation. Beck was the true mastermind behind the tech that simulated Tony's past in Civil War, which he appropriated and named Barf. When Beck protested, Tony fired him. He spent the next several years plotting his revenge. After the blip, he used a crazy and outlandish background of being from an alternate universe to create the Mysterio persona and make himself the next Iron Man. He fooled everybody, including Fury and Peter, with his last goal being to gain control over Edith and make Mysterio the greatest hero of all time. This reveal left a lot of people disappointed. Not only because of the letdown of the multiverse idea, for now, but also the major fan theories about the villain's origin that would make him evil. For me, I'm in the middle about it. On the one hand, it is in character for Mysterio. He's always been a self-centered narcissist in the comics and used his alter ego to gain attention. On the other hand, this reaffirms one of my biggest problems with the Spider-Man villains and the MCU Spider-Man in general. Everyone is living in the shadow of Iron Man. Think about it. Peter is constantly expected to meet the same demands Tony had, and all of his adversaries share a common thread with the Iron Man villains. They all have a personal vendetta against Tony, either being wronged by him or his father. It leaves little room for Spider-Man to have his own identity and not feel like he has to rely on the rest of the MCU to be relevant. He's never needed that before. Hell, Into the Spider-Verse didn't need that. It's why I'm glad they went to what matters in No Way Home. As Beck and his team prepare the finishing touches on his final act, they discover a piece of one of their drones is missing. Peter and MJ finally go on a date. As he confesses his feelings, MJ says she believes he's Spider-Man and shows him the piece of the drone she found. They quickly discover the truth, and Peter admits he's Spider-Man. He resolves to go and stop Beck. He has Ned contact Happy and give him a cover story of Peter staying with family in Berlin while the class heads to London before returning home. He makes it and meets with Fury and Hill and tries to warn them. However, the building around them is only an illusion as Mysterio attacks them. We get the film's best imagery here. The creative visuals Beck creates to mess with Peter remind us why he's always been a popular villain. Eventually, it looks like Fury breaks through and asks Peter who else knows about the drones. He tells him Ned and MJ, only for it to be another illusion as Peter is hit by a train. He later wakes up in the Netherlands. With no one else to turn to, he calls Happy to come get him. Peter is rightfully frustrated that he was duped into giving away Tony's final gift, but Happy reminds him that Tony chose him for a reason, and that's because he believed in him. They head to London as Peter builds a new suit in what is admittedly a fun throwback to Iron Man 1, which I'm sure was cathartic for Jon Favreau. Meanwhile, Beck's team traps Peter's class in the middle of their new simulated fight, planning to make them collateral damage. Peter quite literally heads to the Eye of the Storm and breaks through the illusion. he confronts Beck at the top of the bridge and goes after the glasses. Using his Peter tingle, I hate that they call it that, he destroys the drones and deactivates the remaining ones, creating the illusion and after Peter's class. When he breaks through Beck's final illusion, he asks why he did it, to which he replies, "People will believe anything nowadays." Peter reunites with MJ and the two confess their feelings, beginning a relationship. As they return home, Ned and Betty break up, and Peter questions the relationship between Happy and Aunt May. The film ends with Peter swinging through the city with MJ in what is probably the most genuine reaction to swinging around at that speed. The mid-credits scene, however, is the biggest bombshell of the movie. A news broadcast prompted by J. Jonah Jameson, with J.K. Simmons reprising his role from the Raimi films, a deep fake video made by Dr. Riva has Beck framing Spider-Man for the London attack and mercilessly killing him. The craziest part of all is that he reveals Peter's true identity for the entire world to see. The movie gets a few points from me with a twist like that. The post-credit scene reveals that Fury and Hill were in fact Talos and Soren in disguise, with Talos having gullibly fallen for Beck's story. He contacts Fury, who is shown to be on a spaceship with a bunch of Skrulls. While it wasn't outright spoken here, this was the debut of SWORD, the sister agency to S.H.I.E.L.D. Exactly how long Fury's been away and Talos has been posing as him remains unclear, but I suppose we'll learn about it and the agency's formation in the Secret Invasion series. And with that, Far From Home comes to a less than satisfying conclusion. Like Ant-Man and the Wasp, I enjoyed this film fine when it first came out, but having seen it now, its flaws are more apparent upon rewatching. It feels so underwhelming for what is meant to close out the Infinity Saga, especially for a Spider-Man movie. Even the bad Spider-Man films, like the third Raimi movie and Amazing Spider-Man 2, still had a lot of great moments that defined the character. I can barely think of anything like that here. By the time this script is being written, I have watched No Way Home, and I do understand more of what Marvel and Sony were trying to do with this trilogy. But judging this film as a standalone, it leaves a lot to be desired. With the end of Far From Home, we've reached the conclusion of Phase 3 and the Infinity Saga. It's been quite a journey. I'll admit, I was surprised by how many I disliked at first, then came to love, and ones that I enjoyed initially, then found the cracks underneath. I think the MCU has turned out more good than bad for the most part. We've had stinkers like Dark World, but I feel a more positive experience for all this. This was fun. However, I'm not entirely done. There's one more thing I have to tackle before retiring this series until the end of Marvel's next storyline. Next time, hopefully the day after this video goes up, New Year's Day, we'll be taking a look at the one-shots, web series, and short films made in-house by Marvel Studios that connected to the rest of the MCU. Until then, if you want to keep up with my videos, then be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and check out my VODs on my other channel. Feel free to leave a like and share with friends if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.